Well, everyone, this is probably the most confusing case of allegations in internet history, probably. But if you somehow, I don't even know at this point how you don't know any drama, but if you don't know, Pyrocynical recently, actually not really recently, but maybe about a couple months ago, was accused by a person named Ivory for grooming him when he was 15 and when Pyro was 19 years old. And it was a constant back and forth between Pyrocynical and his defendants, and people who thought Pyrocynical was actually in the wrong and did bad things. Now, currently, where the case stands right now is that Pyrocynical is now actually in the right, and everyone else was wrong, and just made a bunch of random assumptions that had no base claims. And you know what? That's what I believe. I believe that Pyrocynical, although was basically a degenerate furry, he was innocent of grooming. But yes, this situation is very confusing and convoluted and just an absolute mess. So, there are many things to learn from this situation specifically. One is that we should at least take everyone's side with a grain of salt. Ivory, for instance, immediately was harassed by plenty of people and being called a clout chaser after he accused Pyrocynical and after he gave his original response on Reddit. But then, Turkey Tom reached out to Ivory and asked for more screenshots. Now, then, the tide turned to Pyrocynical being even more guilty. But then, recently, which also at the time the recording is today, he gave his response to all this, and just all this random, baseless, and just made up stuff from plenty of sides. And, well, yeah, I think for the most part, the Pyrocynical grooming allegations are solved. And really, what happened was that Pyrocynical wasn't a groomer, but more specifically, he was doing suggestive stuff as a furry, like furry roleplays with Ivory. Now, of course, yeah, he wasn't a groomer, so we shouldn't call him such. However, we can obviously take blame for him on his actions of him doing weird stuff when he was 19 with a 15-year-old. That sounds very suspicious. Now, the thing is, though, the evidence is still somewhat unclear, but from what we know, Ivory shared a lot of screenshots dating back from 2017 and 2016 to when Ivory and Pyrocynical were talking to each other. Now, the thing is, though, there has actually been plenty of evidence to prove that Ivory was lying to other people about his age, and Pyrocynical even admitted that multiple times he did not know Ivory's age until he was around 16. So, yeah, Ivory lied about his age to plenty of people to try and get into more furry roleplay groups, which should obviously sort of not really make his argument really valid in any sort of way, because instantly that kind of tells you that he's certainly a liar in many ways, so you can't entirely trust him. And also, Ivory was interviewed by plenty of people, and in one interview, he cited that he didn't even know the definition of grooming, and a friend just suggested that he use that term to elevate his response, or not response, but rather his allegation even more to an extended height. And this is the main problem of why Ivory is now being blamed again, because Ivory pretty much went into the situation without any actual good proof, really, and just essentially just made stuff up to have the public rally against him. After Pyrocynical released his response video, or not response video, but his Reddit response, and a bunch of people were still harassing him for being a clout chaser, he was complaining on Twitter about how people don't at least help victims of groomings, and that this is going to be noted as like some kind of bad case where people didn't take action. And although, yes, I mean, certainly in this case, it seemed like people were immediately harassing Ivory, even though, well, you should at least give someone a chance, because there's a good chance that someone could be conceived as a groomer. But the problem is that Pyro was never a groomer. He was just someone who did very suggestive roleplay to a minor. But even then, he still didn't know his age until he was 16, and after that, although he still somewhat still did some of that furry roleplay, for the most part he slowed down. And in his most recent response video, he admitted that it's his fault for not at least stopping that suggestive roleplay with Ivory. So, where does the argument go from here? Does it go to the end, Well, I'm going to say this is probably the end of the argument, and people are going to apologize to Pyrocynical specifically, including the commentary YouTubers who rush their videos to try and make some kind of dumb and baseless point. Now, this video isn't. I'm not trying to be like those commentators in this video, but I'm merely giving both sides of the argument and a lesson on why both sides are absolute pieces of garbage, but yeah. So, it seems that Pyrocynical wasn't a groomer, but merely just some stupid furry that just did really weird roleplay stuff with a minor. And even then, that minor did many weird things himself, and he lied to people about his age. So, it certainly seems like I have reason a very trustworthy person. He didn't even know the definition of grooming, so why does he have a chance to call someone a groomer? The main lesson to take away from this entire situation is that we should always listen for the victim first, and if they present good evidence, then we fact check it even more. If the person accused gives a response, you can actually try and analyze the entire response instead of rushing to claim that the person just made their entire response up and lied in their response. So I think Turkey Tom messed up a lot here, and he actually rushed his video out to probably just try and capitalize off the entire situation. And I'm usually just making this video because I want to give my own thoughts about it, and you know what I think? I don't really care, but I just want to go back to watching Pyrocynical without possibly being called some weird kind of guy because apparently Pyrocynical is a groomer. And I'm glad that Pyrocynical did not turn out to be a groomer in the end. But I'm just hoping that people won't entirely begin harassing even more victims of groomings because they supposedly didn't give enough good evidence in their original allegation.